Hello, this is AJ Tatum with Tatum Digital Agency, and today I wanted to do a quick talk about an introduction to web analytics. So digital marketing thrives on data, no matter what kind of site you have, whether it's an e-commerce site, a personal site, or a small business site. You should understand how people interact with it. So while there's plenty of tools out there, the two tools I want to cover in this video are Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. So let's get over to Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is a free web analytics tool that allows you to pretty much analyze traffic. So a lot of small businesses of all sizes, I should say, rely on it. There's about, I think, 50 million users currently using it, or 50 million sites. So it's a pretty popular tool. But one way you can think about it is that it's it's pretty easy to use. As you can see, it's a nice interface here. You have reports. You have some real-time activity. It integrates with other Google products. So it obviously integrates with Google Tag Manager, Google Ads, Google AdSense. Anything if it's another Google product, Google Search Console, it integrates with it really nicely. And perhaps most importantly, it provides a wide range of valuable insights into the behavior of your visitors and your website overall. So how does Google Analytics work? It's quite simple. So by itself, all you need to do is, once you have an account set up, you go to tracking info and you get the tracking code, and you just take this code and you would place that within the header of every page. So that's one option. If you're using WordPress, there's plugins where you can pretty much add it in there that way. Google also has its own plugin where it adds it for you, but we'll get into that in another video. But this is pretty much the easiest way to do it. So what kind of data does Google Analytics get after you're adding that data? Pretty much what you can do is you can get stuff on the user level, at the audience, the session level, page level, and the event level. And then you have to think about it on what kind of data. So you have two types of data pretty much. You have acquisition data and behavior data. So as you can see here, you have acquisition. You can go through the overview, and it shows you whether it's a direct, social, organic search, referral, other, email. So it shows you the different channels that it's coming through. And you can go deeper into Google Search Console, see how your social networks are going and everything else. So it pretty much allows you to see the acquisition of your users. The next is the behavior. So let's go into the overview, and here we can see how long a user has stayed on a website, what their first and last page was, and the most common pathway of getting through your site. So this allows you to see, okay, in this scenario, the homepage is getting the most views, next the blog, then we have a web story, blog post, web development, and some other pages here. And then you can go into behavior flow. That kind of allows you to start seeing where people start dropping off, and where they, how it goes through. So it really allows you to get in there and see a lot of nice reports. You have site content, site speed, which is really nice to know because that's a very important and critical factor in how Google ranks you, is if your site speed is up to stuff. So that's a good thing to always keep in mind. Another thing it does is it has site search and then events. And then so you have event actions, event labels, things of that nature. So what are events? Pretty much as you can see here, so we have Convert Pro, so we have different categories, and then Form, which is one of the categories that I track. So if we look into Form, you can see that we have event category. Let's go back to the label here. So that we have contact form, newsletter, and scheduled consultation. So these are the types of forms that we have, the labels that we have set. And action for form, I have just as submit. So it allows you to break it down into different dimensions. Other types of events that you can track are file downloads, button clicks, outbound links, video plays, things of that nature. So let's actually look into, I haven't looked at this one, but creating an effective web presence, that's an event, and the label that we have for that. It looks like that's going into the video. Yeah, story progress. So it's actually create an effective, so that's a web story that I did. So it's actually showing that people are using web stories, which was the new thing that I released, which is kind of cool. So what is event tracking in Google Analytics? Why does it really matter? So when you have event tracking established, what you can do is you can see the total events and an average event per session, as you see here. And then you have total events based on categories, individual events, session data for events, e-commerce data. So if I were selling products, what you could do is you could have here, when you look at the home, let's go back to the home page. It actually shows you revenue. So you can have this be geared from events. So if you have a form submission, someone adds to a cart, makes a purchase of $10, you'd be able to track that you've got $10 to your website through Google Events. Now let's look at the components of event tracking. So I'm going to go into, in order to do this and for a better explanation, I'll show you some goals. So I'm going to go to admin, and when this loads up, I go to goals. You can see right now I have just 4 goals. I have contact form submission, newsletter form submission, newsletter subscription confirmed, and scheduled free consultation. Those are 2. There's 3 types of events, and one is a destination goal. So I'm going to look at the contact form submission that I have set up, and then I'll go to goal details. So we have category, which is the name. So typically you have something that's pretty generic that you're going to have that would cover everything. So you have videos or forums or forum. Then you're going to have the action, which can be play. In this case I have submit, so it's the action these are takes. And then the label. So the label of this form is the contact form. And as you can see here, we have value. And this would be if you had a cart or some type of checkout process where you would have something in there, and you can have it greater than, equal to, or less than, or it would track. And then you use the event to value as a goal value for the conversion. So you cancel out of that. And the other type of goal that you can have while we're here is the destination goal, which is really simple. It's pretty much saying that, hey, if the URL starts with this, newsletter subscription confirmed. So it's not taking in any event data. It's basically just looking at the URL. So that's the case when someone actually signs up for the newsletter. So they do the newsletter form submission, then they get the email, and they have to click on the link in the email to confirm their subscription. So I want to track that as a different goal. So these are all great. The issue that comes into play is actually tracking these events. It can be difficult with Google Analytics itself, especially within a WordPress. So what can help you out with that is by utilizing another Google tool called Google Tag Manager. So what Google Tag Manager is basically something where you can manage tags, and you can think of tags as scripts. So when you go back to Google Analytics and we look at this tracking info and tracking code, this script is what Google Tag Manager would call a tag. And you can see that if I look at, if I go to tags here, I have Google Analytics as one of my tags. And I have it confirmed right here with the Google Analytics variable. So you can set variables, we'll get into that a little bit later. But this is essentially a tag. So we're having Google Analytics, and I'm using the Universal Analytics. I'm not using Google Analytics 4 yet. And I'm having it trigger on all page views. So it allows you to basically manage different scripts or different tags on a page without actually changing anything on your website. So you don't have to change any code or do anything fancy. You don't have to involve a developer. You don't have to know any code. You just have to pretty much do some clicking around. There is a learning curve to Tag Manager, but once you get it and understand it, it's pretty easy to use. So let's go over the components of Tag Manager. So right now, I'm in what's called a container. So the container is tatumdigitalagency.com. And you have many containers, and containers is pretty much what holds all the tags, triggers, variables, folders, everything that's going on. Now then we're going to go into triggers. So in this case, I have the different triggers that go on, and triggers are important because it basically it specifies when a tag should be fired. So in general, they can be broken down into events and into figures. And then, so let's look at one of these triggers here, where we have newsletter subscription, or better yet, YouTube video interaction. So we can see that we have a trigger type of YouTube video. So that's something that comes out of a trigger, out of the predefined list here, YouTube video. And we want to do capture start, and actually want to do complete as well. Oops. And we have pause, seeking, progress, and then we're going to do this for all videos. And let's go back to it again, and we can see it references this trigger here, the GA video interaction event. So while I'm here, I'm actually going, oh no, I'll do it later. Now let's look at some variables and constants. So variables are pretty much you have some built-in variables like custom events, form event element, page host name, page path, referral, video percent, etc. Then you can have some user-defined variables as well. And these are things that interact with what's called the data layer variable. Data layer variable is essentially what gets pushed up through JavaScript. So it gets a little bit more complicated, and we'll go through it in another video, but it allows you to push in things in JavaScript without having to actually modify the HTML of a page. So if you think about it, if you have some type of script where it has to sift through to find, let's say, the total transaction of the cart, and it has to look for a form field in the HTML, it will take you a lot longer rather than having something that's pushed up via JavaScript into the data layer. And so that makes it available immediately. It's right on the page load to Google Tag Manager. You don't have to worry about it. So let me actually go through this a little bit more here. So as you can see, I have a couple things going on here in my Tag Manager, and a couple things that are paused. So for example, I use Active Campaign. I do have Facebook Pixel going on, and then I have also Google Analytics generic events and Gravity Forms event, which I will go into in another video. And then I have the conversion tracker, which is paused, and then LinkedIn Insight is going on, and Microsoft Bing Universal, or Microsoft Advertising Universal Event Tracking. And some of the specific triggers, just to go into that again. So we can see contact form submission, where it looks at the page URL. These are custom events, so that we have going on, and then we have variables. And let's actually look at some triggers here, and I'll show you some of the ones you can choose from. So you can see you have a lot of triggers, or sorry, tags that come with Google Tag Manager. So you have all the Google Analytics, all the Google products. You can insert custom HTML, and then you have some third-party ones as well right here. So that's really about it. So I guess if you have to go, if you're still kind of thinking, okay, well, what's the difference between Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager? Obviously, Google Tag Manager, there is no reporting functionality. All Google Tag Manager is doing is pretty much relaying events from your website to Google Analytics. So it's pushing events from, in this case, from Gravity Forms or generic events or video interaction events to Google Analytics, so that you can go to Google Analytics and actually look at the reports and look at the behavior of the users. So I hope that helps you out in knowing a little bit more about web analytics, specifically Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. In the next video, or the upcoming videos, I plan on going into how you can use Gravity Forms to track events. Gravity Forms is a pretty powerful WordPress plugin. It's one of my favorite plugins that I've used, and I will show you how to do that coming up next. Thank you.